Hello and welcome to the Attack the Rack podcast. Today we have Mason Theile, head varsity boys basketball coach at Holland High School, joining the program. Mason not only is in his first year at Holland High School, Mason is also in his first year as a varsity basketball coach. So this is a really great interview, really enjoyable hearing the perspective of a first year coach. First though, what an amazing opening weekend the NCAA tournament was. Only two number one seeds have made it to the Sweet 16. According to our data guy, Peter Hunsberger, that is only the fifth time that this has happened since the tournament expanded to 64 teams back in 1985. And then obviously you've got the Princeton story. They're a 15 seed. They're in the Sweet 16. They defeated Arizona in round one. And then to get to the Sweet 16, they destroyed Missouri. They looked really, really good in that game. Another major upset was 13-seeded Furman knocking off number 4 seed Virginia. And what an incredible finish to that game. With 12.3 seconds left, Furman is down by 1 point, and Virginia has the ball. Inbounding the ball. They inbound the ball. Furman traps. Then Virginia guard Kihei Clark, who was trapped, he just heaved the ball as far as he could, heaves it across half court. Ball is intercepted by Furman, passed up to J.P. Puges, who nails a three-pointer to give Furman a 2-point lead now with 2.3 seconds left, and that was all it took. Huge upset for Furman. Furman then got destroyed by San Diego State on Saturday. San Diego State looked really good in that game. They are going to face Alabama, number 1 seed Alabama, to advance to the Elite Eight. Alabama definitely a favorite in that one, but I would definitely not count out the Aztecs. And of course, we have to mention the biggest upset in NCAA tournament history. Number 16 seeded Fairleigh Dickinson defeats number 1 seed Purdue, only the second time in the history of the NCAA tournament that a 16 seed has defeated a number 1 seed. But why is this a bigger upset than UMBC's upset of number 1 seed Virginia a couple years ago? Well, first of all, FDU only won 4 games last year. This year they should not have even been in the tournament. In fact, the only reason they are in the tournament is because Northeast's regular season champ and conference tourney champ Merrimack is ineligible to play in the NCAA tournament this season. They recently bumped up from Division II to Division I, and there's a 4-year period where you before you're eligible to play in the NCAA tournament. So because of that, the bid for the Northeast Conference went to second place, FDU. Statistically speaking, FDU is one of the worst defensive teams in the country, and yet they were able to hold number 1 seed Purdue to just 54 points. They're also among the shortest teams in the country, and yet were able to defeat Purdue, featuring 7'4" Zach Edey. It is early Sunday afternoon right now, and tournament games are just getting underway. Later on today, FDU will be playing number 9 seed Florida Atlantic, who had a nice comeback victory against 8 seed Memphis. Purdue just highlighting yet another disappointing Big Ten NCAA tournament. 8 teams got into the tournament from the Big Ten, and as of right now, there is only the possibility of Michigan State and Indiana getting to the Sweet 16. So best case scenario, 2 out of the 8 Big Ten teams make the Sweet 16. Purdue now has lost their last 3 first-round games in the NCAA tournament. First losing as a 4 seed to a 13 seed, then losing to a 2 seed as a 15 seed, and now losing as a 1 seed to a 16 seed. Not good for the Boilermakers. But all right, without further ado, producer Dale, why don't you roll the intro and let's get into this interview with head varsity boys basketball coach at Holland High School, Mason Theile. Welcome to the Attack the Rack podcast. I am your host, Curt Van Hecken, and you are tuning in to the #1 rated podcast on the planet based on the people that rated it #1. The Attack the Rack podcast is brought to you by Get to 2 Media. Hey, Attack the Rack listeners. Today is the first day of spring, and once spring rolls around, the weather temperatures increase, but not super high. During spring weather, a coat is too heavy. What you need is today's sponsor. The sponsor of the program today is Jacket. Jacket provides exactly what you need during spring weather. Go out and get one today. All right, we are joined today by Mason Theile, head varsity boys basketball coach at Holland High School. We are actually recording this in a very, very special place. We are in the Dutch Dome on the campus of Holland High School. We are down below the bleachers on the east side of the dome in a team room created by head coach Mason Theile. There is a lot of history down here, Coach. Back I don't know when they built the new locker rooms, but down here, this used to be the locker room. In fact, where we are sitting right now was the actual lockers. A lot of history, a lot of memories down here for myself as an alum. So I am super excited to do this today with you.
Yeah, it's going to be great. We've had a lot of alums come check this spot out and shared the same thing, that they've got a handful of memories down here from when it was used as the locker room and some other things. So it's been a really cool addition to the facility, that's for sure.
Yeah, I'm super excited here. All right, so obviously, as we said, you're the head varsity basketball coach here at Holland High School. Let's rewind the clock. Let's go back in history and talk about kind of how you got here. When you were growing up, did you obviously you played basketball? Did you play any other sports?
I did. I played football all the way, from the youth levels through high school, and then growing up, I was a baseball player as well. Decided when I got to high school that basketball was my thing, and I was going to do that in the spring as well. So I gave up baseball, but I did play football all the way through high school as
well. And speaking of more so the basketball angle here, what was your experience like playing basketball in high school? Where did you go to high school?
So from Grand Rapids, I'm a West Catholic grad, 3-year varsity player there. I had a super interesting perspective during my playing career, especially in high school, where I was the basketball guy at a primarily football school. Like I said, I played football all the way through and have some great memories of that too, and got to play on some great teams. But I was always the guy who was the basketball guy that played football, versus most of my buddies were the football guys who played basketball. And so that was super interesting. But we had a really great group of athletes in our class and in the classes around us. Not only talented athletes, but really hardworking and smart kids, which allowed us to have some pretty successful seasons on the hardwood as well.
Yeah. And one connection you and I do have, I know you played AAU for the West Michigan Lakers when you were think it was 16U. I was one of your coaches as an assistant coach, and I got to tell you, I had a blast with that team. We had a great group of guys, had a lot of fun, and won a lot of games too.
Absolutely, yeah. We had a group of guys from all around West Michigan who could really play. And obviously, that team changed with a few guys over my 3 years with the Lakers, but we had a core group of about 10 of us who rode it all the way through 3 years. And like you said, we had won a lot of games, and it was fun. Still keep in touch with a lot of those guys to this day, and was really blessed to be with that group. I think all of us had the opportunity to play collegiate sports in some capacity, whether they decided to or not. Obviously, was specific to the guy, but yeah, it was a really talented group.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. I had a ton of fun with that. All right, so after high school, what was next for you?
So I've got a pretty crazy story from high school until I took this job. So right after I got done playing at West Catholic, I joined the coaching staff. So I coached at West Catholic my freshman year and sophomore year of college. The first year after high school, I was a JV assistant back at West Catholic, and then my second year was moved up and was an assistant with the varsity. So that's kind of how I got my foot in the door coaching. I was always one of those players, while I was playing, that people told me they could see me as a coach someday, and I never put much thought into it, until I was deciding what I was going to do after high school. So really enjoyed my time there. I coached, under a guy named Tony Fisher, who was my head coach. So obviously had some familiarity with him, and he showed me the ropes of, what it's like to be a coach, but also at the same time, I was 19 and 20 years old and was actually coaching guys who had been my teammates. So that was a pretty interesting perspective.
Oh, I bet that was. Now, while you were doing that, were you in school?
Yeah, so I did. I went to Grand Rapids Community College for my first 2 years of school while I was coaching there.
All right. Well, you must have obviously realized at a pretty young age then that you wanted to get into coaching. When do you think that realization hit you?
I think it was in the back of my mind for most of my playing career, but I never really thought about it until the time came where I wasn't going to be around the game anymore once I had graduated high school. And then while I was coaching at West Catholic, I think I had the realization for the first time that it's something that I didn't want to just be a hobby that maybe I could make a career out of, or at least take pretty seriously. And that I was decent at it. So I think it was really those first couple years, while I was coaching at West Catholic, that I really realized I wanted to coach.
All right. So after helping out with your alma mater at West Catholic in Grand Rapids, what was next for you?
Yeah. So this is kind of where things take an interesting turn.
Yeah.
Although I wanted to coach all the way through, I had finished my associate's degree at GRCC and was ready to make a move to a 4-year institution to finish my degree. And like I said, although I knew I wanted to coach, the window for playing was closing. So I actually walked on at Aquinas for my last 2 years and resumed my playing career there.
Oh, wow.
Spent most of that time, splitting time between the JV and the varsity teams. I was not the kind of player who could take 2 years off and jump back into it and be a starter at that level. But I had realized that it was probably the last opportunity I'd ever have to play, and which was great for me. Got to be on a couple talented teams at Aquinas, be around some great guys. But at that time, I still knew that when I was done, I'd want to jump back into coaching. So it was a pretty cool relationship that I had with our coaches there as someone who they knew had been coaching and then would want to continue after. So I think they kept me in the loop on some of the, behind the scenes stuff that coaches do more so than other players may at that level, because they're just, not as focused on the coaching aspect of it, even though I was.
Yeah, that's quite a unique journey there.
Very much so.
How did you, when you were coaching those 2 years at West Catholic and going to GRCC, were you still thinking, hey, I want to still try to play somewhere college basketball?
No, I was not. had pretty much accepted the fact that my playing career was over. I had decided to go to Aquinas to finish my schooling so that I could actually stay in Grand Rapids and continue to coach.
Yeah.
But I had a good handful of friends who were on the team at Aquinas at that time, and would go up there and just play in their summer open gyms, and realized that I could still hang. And a couple of the coaches were there one day, and I had a pretty decent day, and they were looking for another guy to fill out the roster and offered me the spot. So it kind of came out of the blue. But no, I was planning on going to Aquinas and just being a student and continuing coaching. But at that time, decided that I probably needed to get everything I could out of my playing career before I coached for the next how many every year.
Yeah, no, for sure. So what were you studying at Aquinas?
So I studied exercise science in undergrad.
Okay. All right. So you finish up playing two years at Aquinas. You graduate. Now what are we doing?
So when I got done at Aquinas, I was looking kind of at any basketball job that was available, whether it be the high school or the college level. Got a pretty cool opportunity in the summer of 2019 to go work a temporary coaching position at IMG Academy down in Florida.
Oh, wow.
So I was down there for 12 weeks, helping run their summer camps, train their athletes, train some pro guys who came on site to campus. So that was kind of the first opportunity that I had to be around the game at a really high level. I had played on some decent teams in West Michigan and at the NAIA level, but to have the athletes that show up down there and to be able to rebound and put those guys through workouts was kind of my first introduction to high level basketball in that way.
How did you come about that opportunity?
So I was emailing coaches daily, looking at job boards, doing everything that a young coach will do to just try to get a sit down with someone to try to get an interview, and stumbled across the posting that they were hiring a group of young coaches to come down there for the summer, and threw my hat in the ring and did a couple interviews and was lucky enough to be chosen. So was down there for about 3.5 months,
wow,
which was awesome.
That's awesome. And then what was next?
From there, kind of as my time down in Florida came to an end, I was looking for something, obviously a little more permanent. And then a guy well, Joe Rodriguez, left Fenville to take the Byron Center job, and had heard that I was trying to get into coaching. And he reached out to me and told me that he had taken the Byron Center job and that he was looking for an assistant. So I decided to take him up on that offer and jumped on his staff at Byron Center and was there for 2 years. My first as primarily his assistant, and then my second year I also took the role of JV head coach while helping out with the varsities there.
Okay. Now, all along, were you, did you have your eye on, hey, I want to be a varsity coach? Were you looking for varsity jobs at that time, or were you trying to maybe build a little bit of a resume, or were you? Or did you know all along,
yeah,
hey, I want to be a varsity head coach?
I was somewhere in the middle. I had a dream of being a college coach for a long time, and I don't know if it was the fact that I'm impartial to the college game over the high school game, because I love high school basketball, especially in West Michigan. But I was looking for a way where I could be involved in basketball full time, and that was my goal. So, throughout my first year or two there, I threw my name in the ring for a couple of varsity jobs, which is funny looking back on because I wasn't ready. But I don't know if you're ever ready, but definitely at that time I was not. But got a couple interviews. Obviously, nothing ever came through. But I had a couple leads on some graduate assistantships at the college level after my first year at Byron Center, and that was the start of the pandemic. So that really hurt that opportunity, but was lucky enough to stay on with coach for a couple years. So I don't know. It was kind of somewhere in between, trying to get a jump to the college level or maybe getting a varsity job down the road.
Okay, and then obviously you went after after a couple of years with Coach Joe Rodriguez at Byron Center High School. You then went to Tennessee.
I did, yeah. After I got done, I got an opportunity after my second year at Byron Center to make a leap to the college level. Took a job at Tusculum University as a graduate assistant. which is in East Tennessee in the Knoxville area, Division II. Awesome experience. We had a great team. We had the reigning Conference Player of the Year, second team All-American who came back, who is now finishing his career at Indiana State. We had a handful of guys who went to play overseas. Super awesome group, and was lucky to be around a pretty cool staff. It was an expedited GA program where at most schools your GA term is 2 years. This one was only one. But yeah, it was a great experience. Probably the most important thing I've ever done in my college career.
And what was your role as a grad assistant?
So as a grad assistant at the small college level, you do a little bit of everything. Breaking down film, working out players. We had 2 graduate assistants and then 2 full-time assistants. So each of us GAs was paired with one of the full-time assistants, and we did everything together. So Deontay Ferguson, now a coach at the University of Indianapolis, was the coach I worked with closely. We handled all of the post players, so we would work those guys out. We handled their player development stuff in practice. We watched film with them. So that was a pretty big role of what I did. We split scouting reports, so I was breaking down film, putting scouting reports together for road games and home games and all that kind of stuff. And then on the other side, where being a GA is a little bit unique, not only do you get to do all the coaching stuff, but you are charged with the responsibility of a lot of the behind the scenes work, doing laundry and ordering meals and planning road trips and packing all the equipment for those trips. And so that was a lot of work. There was a lot of responsibilities in our position, but I really got to see what coaching is like from all angles, which was really cool.
All right, I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll be back with more of the Attack the Rack podcast. And welcome back to the Attack the Rack podcast. Real Estate Ryan has been in real estate for over 20 years and can help you with all your real estate needs. Realtor Ryan has helped me in my journey in learning about real estate, and he can do the same for you, whether you're looking to buy, sell, or just learn more about real estate in general. Ring Realtor Ryan. Now, as a grad assistant, are you then also taking a class or two?
Yeah, so I completed my master's in a year all online.
Wow.
Which was pretty interesting. I pretty much coached basketball full time, and then tried to find time to complete my coursework somewhere in between there. So that definitely was difficult at times, but worth it nonetheless.
Yeah, so you got to see, you mentioned earlier wanting to, or had the thought in your head of wanting to coach basketball full time, make it a full time thing for you. You got to see and be a part of what that really truly looks like. What what is a day in the life? You got to see obviously your head coach doing that full time. What's it like a day in the life of a head college coach? Yeah, at that level, at that D2, D1 level.
Yeah, it's definitely interesting, and I've learned through my experience that so many coaches handle it differently. Some coaches are really hands-on with every aspect of the program. Some coaches are really good about handing responsibilities off to assistants or GAs. So I don't know if you can say all in what the day in the life looks like, but during the season, we would meet early in the mornings, make sure that our to-do lists were done in terms of recruiting and planning road trips and all that kind of stuff. And then we would plan practice, and then we would have some time to ourselves to finish up our own tasks, which were, whether it was breaking down film or any of that logistics work. And then we would practice in the early afternoon. Around dinner time, we would wrap up, and our head coach would go home for the day. And then as assistants, we would bring guys back into the gym in the evenings to get them additional shots. And so, yeah, it was super busy. It was super busy. But the blessing in that is that our head coach trusted us enough to delegate a lot of the tasks. And while it made our lives a little bit busier, it's what we're there for. Yeah, and it allowed him to maintain some balance of being able to go home and spend some time with his wife and kids. And so I think we found a pretty good stride with, between our head coach and the assistants that we all had.
Did you get involved with recruiting at all?
I did. Yep. So I had basically half of our recruiting devoted to me, myself, and the assistant that I was paired with. So yeah, we would go on the road. We primarily focused on junior college transfers. So we watched a lot of junior college games. They got to recruit the Division One and Division Two junior college tournaments, which was really fun. So got to travel for those. But yeah, had our hands all over the recruiting stuff, and we also had a developmental team there where the GAs handled all of the recruiting for that. So that was really fun. Got to take kids on tours when they came on visits. Got to go out and watch high school games and talk to parents and coaches, and that was a great way not only for me to learn how to recruit, but to also get familiar with people in that area, because I had never really coached outside of West Michigan, on a full-time basis. So, to learn the geography and more about the schools and coaches in that area, was really done through the recruiting process.
Sure. All right, so you did that for a year, and then is that right into your gig here?
Yeah, so I did that for a year, and like I said, you sign on as a GA for either a year or two, and my term had been up, and decided that I wanted to look elsewhere for options of my next stop, and so I decided to come home to West Michigan just as a home base while I figured out what I was going to do, and had a handful of interviews for full-time assistant spots at the collegiate level. Really had no intentions of taking a high school job, but the assistant AD while I was at Byron Center had taken the AD job at Holland and gave me a call, and we had discussed it, the varsity position here at Holland, and not many people know this, but I actually said I was not interested.
Okay.
And then a day or two went by, and I was like, you know what, I would like to learn more about Holland, what they have going on, and stepped on campus and met with our athletic director and some other people in the community, and I was hooked.
Okay.
I was hooked.
What were some of the things that kind of hooked you in?
Mostly the people here. We have really high-level people in our districts, between administration, staff, and most importantly, our kids. We have awesome kids here, not only in our building, but all throughout our district here. That and the community aspect is so important to me. When I was growing up, going through West Catholic, we had a very, very tight-knit community. And it was one of those schools that is generational. A lot of myself and my classmates, our parents or even grandparents were West Catholic grads. And I've learned that Holland, in a way, is very similar. There are some generational families here who have been involved with Holland Public Schools for a long time, and it's a really close-knit community, and that's something that I was looking for, so that stood out to me too.
All right, so now you're hooked, now you're interested, but now you got to go through the whole interview process.
Absolutely.
What was that like for you?
Interviewing is interesting. It's definitely different when you are interviewing for a head coaching position rather than an assistant coaching position. As an assistant, you're often asked about your philosophies and how you handle different situations, but your number one job is to support the head coach in whatever they think is best. Now you're, trying to convince the people who are interviewing you that the way that you do things is the best option, available to them. So definitely more preparation, actually putting my thoughts on paper, to what my philosophy is and, how I would run a program. I think good assistants have those thoughts in their head, for as long as they're assistants. But when the time comes to actually speak your philosophy into truth, it takes some preparation to do that. Sure. So making sure I was prepared in that way. But this position is so much more than X's and O's. So presenting my vision for how our program can fit within the community and how it can enhance the experience of our kids is probably the most important part.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, you got hired right at the end of last school year, which was, had to have been a little bit of a challenge because now you're going into June, which is a big month for camps and scrimmages and team camps. And how did you go about managing that with very, very little time, if any, to prepare?
Yeah, it was super interesting. I don't know what my official hire date was, but I met with the kids for the first time on June 1st, which, like you said, is super late compared to a lot of coaching changes happen. And we were on the court for the first time together. I believe June 1st was a Friday, so whatever that Monday was, the 4th, we were on the court, which was interesting. I think some of it for me was trying to put our kids through a series of activities over that week that allowed me to see where they're at.
Yep.
Obviously I had my philosophies of how I wanted us to play and what it would look like. But at this level, because we're not going out and recruiting kids and you get whoever you get, you have to mold your philosophy to who you have. So a lot of what we did probably for the first month or so was a blend of showing them how I want to play, but also seeing where they were at. On top of that, just trying to get to know these kids and learn everyone's name and what their story is and start to try to build that relationship is something that I was really intentional about because, having gone through it as a player, I know how difficult coaching changes can be, especially for our seniors who, at least for the last 3 years, if not longer, that they've been in our program, they've, played for the same coach and learned to trust him and learned his philosophy and all those kind of things. So making sure I was intentional about building relationships was a big piece of it. We made a decision to not go out and play as much in the summer. We had a couple teams come out here for some scrimmages, and then we went to go see a few. But we probably only played 8 or 10 times, if even that many this summer. And I know some other teams will go out and play 25, 30 games throughout June. But we felt it was more important for us to be together to, continue learning my philosophy, but also just to get to know each other.
Sure.
We didn't feel it was right to take a team that had a new coach and actually was pretty much a brand new roster and throw them out there to play when we weren't that close yet.
Right. And get on the same page.
Yeah, we definitely weren't on that time. Weren't on the same page at that time. So it was really, really important for us to just be together and practice together and learn about each other. And so that's what we really tried to focus on for that month or so.
And then now the summer's winding down, school's starting up. What did your fall look like as you prepped for the season?
Yeah, so we lost about half our guys to fall sports, which I love. It's great going to see our guys play soccer and tennis and all the other sports that we play, when they're outside of basketball. We had 4-man workouts 2 nights a week. So about 20 kids would come in, during separate time slots every, or 2 nights a week for most of the fall. And then we would play open gym, just open run 5-on-5 for a third night. So they were here 3 times. And then on Sundays, we would open the gym up. No instruction, no, not even really any drill work, but just for guys to shoot. So that way our fall athletes could come in and at least get some shots up during their seasons. But we would have 2 days of instruction, with our 4-man groups, which was great. We could really break down some of the offensive things that we were planning to put in this year, and then also, let them get out and run and play together one other night a week too.
Nice. Did you have a pretty good grasp on everything that, there's, as a head coach, there's a lot of non-basketball stuff that goes along with that job.
Absolutely.
Going into it, did you have a pretty good grasp on what all that looked like?
Yes and no. Obviously I knew that there was a lot of things behind the scenes that needed to be taken care of, and I feel like I'm a pretty organized guy and a good communicator, so I wasn't intimidated by that, but I was surprised just at the volume of tasks that seemed to appear. I had a good grasp on some of them that were going to come my way, but it was, eye-opening how many things have to be done and how many little details go into trying to put together a successful season. So going through that for the first time was a bit surprising.
Yeah, and then what are some things you learned as a first-year coach?
Your time management is everything. At the high school level, we don't get paid to do this full time. So whether it's in the district or not, we're all working day jobs. And so balancing that on top of all the basketball tasks and activities is really, really important. What I probably learned the most and was lucky enough to have this year is that how important it is to have good people around you and a good staff. If you don't have a staff that is willing to give up, their time and their talent, it's going to be really hard to put successful seasons together. I'm lucky enough to have a staff that is here every time that we have an event. It's never just me and the kids. Even 4-man workouts in the fall, we had at least 3 coaches here, so we could I could delegate a lot of the tasks to them and trust that they would be done the way that I would like them to be or the way that they need to be, because I don't know what I would have done without them because of how many layers there are to this position.
Sure. And then what are some of the more fulfilling things that you experienced here in your first season?
My perspective has changed since being in this position. Like I'm an extremely competitive guy, and nobody likes to lose, but I would argue that I hate it more than anyone. And so some of our wins have been fulfilling, but there are so many moments that happen outside the course of, or during the course of a season that are outside of practicing games. And that's the stuff I love. Just, laughing around the table at team dinners and, learning about our kids and their stories and what makes them who they are. Really learning about our kids as humans rather than just as basketball players. Not only do I think it's good practice for anyone who's in our position, but it's the most fulfilling piece of it for sure.
Awesome. Hey, I really, really appreciate your time. Really appreciate you joining the program. This is an episode as again being a Holland alum, an alum of the program. The Dutch Dome is one of my favorite places on earth, so this is something I've really been looking forward to. I really appreciate you joining the program. Appreciate your time. There's a way that I like to end the program. With my guests, I try to find something, some questions to ask that kind of go along with our theme here. Obviously, today's theme and a lot of the themes of some of the guests I've had been basketball. So with that in mind, I got a couple questions for you. Who are your 5 favorite basketball players of all time? And as I always do mention, they don't have to be players that actually played in the NBA.
Sure. This is a tough one. The easy answer is Michael Jordan is my favorite. I feel like that's a common answer. But I was born into a time where he was on the back half of his career, but still got to experience, obviously his impact on the game, but the shoes and all that. And loved watching The Last Dance a couple years ago when that came out. So he's number 1. I am a LeBron James fan, so I'll put him in there. Growing up, I had a Vince Carter poster on my wall. We'd lower the hoop down and try to dunk when he was in his heyday of doing that. So I'll put him in there. I don't know. I'm trying to think of non-NBAs. The last 2, at least that I have been fans of. When I was super young, I was a North Carolina fan.
Okay.
Loved Tyler Hansbrough when he was there. Didn't have the pro career that I was hoping for, but was a huge fan of his. Also come from a Notre Dame family.
Okay.
And love Demetrius Jackson.
Sure.
Demetrius Jackson, little guard for them. It was really fun to watch.
Nice. And then how about 3 to 5 of your 5 favorite basketball movies?
Basketball movies. Like Mike is my favorite.
Classic.
Coach Carter.
Yep.
Glory Road. White Men Can't Jump. Ooh, last one. There's so many good ones.
Yeah.
It's hard to narrow down. I'm gonna go with Hoosiers.
Hoosiers, okay.
Love
so,
Hoosiers.
I will say I think that's the first time Like Mike was mentioned. I think Glory Road was mentioned one other time. Coach Carter's been mentioned a couple times. Hoosiers a couple times, but I think I will have to say I'd have to look back at the data, but I believe White Man Can't Jump probably has been mentioned probably the most.
That one doesn't surprise me. That's a great movie.
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure. All right, and then the last question, as a head varsity coach, as we've talked about, is you put in a ton of time into that.
Absolutely.
It doesn't leave you much time for anything else. But when you do have some free time, what are a few things you like to do?
I love to be outside. In Michigan, coaching basketball is the perfect thing because you're locked in the gym when the winter weather hits, and then when it gets nice. So I love to play golf. Love to spend time on the lake. Got a group of friends that we like to wakeboard.
Nice.
In the winters, we go and snowboard when we get a chance to. Besides that, I've got a pretty close group of friends and family, and so just like spending time with them and hanging out.
Nice. Well, hey, again, Mason, thank you so much for joining the program, and best of luck to you now as kind of the off season's going to get going here, and good luck with everything you're going to do this spring and summer as you get ready for the 2023-2024 seasons.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Please subscribe to the Attack the Rack YouTube channel and hit the notification bell so you are updated every time we post. Also, please like, comment, and share.